Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's UDC Library webinar, Using AI for Research. We know this is an important and popular topic, and well, we're all learning as we go, so we're very glad that you are all here to join us today. My name is Megan Kowalski. I am the Outreach and Reference Librarian for the UDC Library, and I'll be handling the back-end logistics for today's event. Our host today is my colleague, Kathy Meals, our Assessment Librarian. We will have time for questions, both recorded and unrecorded at the end. But if you have any questions during the session, please go ahead and drop them in the chat. We will be monitoring that. So thank you again for joining us today. I will send out a link to the recording once the event is over. Take it away, Kathy.
All right. Thank you, Megan. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us today for using AI for research. So just to reiterate what Megan was saying, the world of generative AI is enormous. It's getting bigger and more complicated every day. And so I wanted to begin with a few notes to just kind of frame our discussion today. We can't cover every research tool or every aspect of AI in one webinar, and we're not complete AI experts. So think of this presentation today, like our other webinars, as a launching off point to help us discuss and learn. We're trying to encourage additional conversation, collaborative learning, and we're all in this process together. So with that frame in mind, here's a quick overview of what we're going to do today. We'll talk about a few specific ways that generative AI can support academic research. And then we'll briefly review three tools, Semantic Scholar, Research Rabbit, and Elicit. We'll go over some best practices for using generative AI in research, and then share some resources for further investigation and learning. And feel free to put questions in the chat. I know some of my colleagues will be able to answer some, or we can answer them at the end as well. So how exactly can AI help with the research process? So the first one, I think, is probably more familiar to a lot of us, brainstorming topics, keywords, or search strategies. Getting started with research can be a really hard thing, and AI tools can help you think through possible research topics, refine your topics, strengthen research questions, identify search terms and strategies. And this is where general tools like ChatGPT can be very helpful. We won't talk about those as a tool for research today, but you can use it in some ways. Different tools can also help in finding and making connections among literature. So this involves searching for sources, making connections among literature, and even mapping the literature in some cases. And tools can also provide recommendations for additional things to read. Summarizing or getting answers from literature. We know academic literature can be tough to read, and doing research involves a lot of reviewing and assessing materials. AI tools can help us summarize research so we can review more of it more efficiently. And some tools can answer specific questions you might have of specific sources. And then the last two, we're not going to discuss these today due to lack of time. Perhaps we can cover them in the future, but I think it's still useful to note that there are also AI tools that can help with data analysis, as well as research-specific writing tools that offer templates and help with flow and so forth. All right. So let's move on to talking about a few of the many, many, many tools out there. There are tons of tools out there. And some try to do everything. There are some that try to guide a whole research project from start to finish, from beginning to publication. And others are pretty narrow, just analyzing one paper, summarizing a whole paper. So I want to do a quick introduction today to three tools that can help with research. These are not necessarily an endorsement, but a few that we have tried out and found interesting. So we'll talk about Semantic Scholar, Research Rabbit, and Elicit. And we'll first talk about Semantic Scholar. All right, you all should be able to see Semantic Scholar now. This is the first tool on our agenda. You can find it at semanticscholar.org. It is free and it is supposed to remain free. You can do some things without an account, but many other features require an account. It is run by a nonprofit. You can see the product overview at the bottom of the page. This will give you a whole list of all of the things that this tool can do. Primarily, you can use Semantic Scholar to find resources and get recommendations for additional literature. So underlying Semantic Scholar is a huge collection of scholarly materials, and they get this from agreements with publishers, data providers, from open access journals. It's a big corpus, and the corpus is growing. If you go back to the main search bar, you can always see the current size of the corpus in the search bar. So right now, this is 225 million papers. So we can start with the toolbar here to navigate using semantic search, natural language searching, not just keywords. So let's just do a search. I'm going to stick with information literacy, since that's a thing that we study in library and information sciences. Okay, so here we have search results that Semantic Scholar has found based not just on keyword searching, but also on semantic search, the relationships among words, the meanings of words. You can see that we have, like in many library databases, we have a lot of options for filters. So we can use a date range filter to limit our resources to, let's do the last 5. Whoops, I meant to do the last 5 years, but this will work too. There's also several other filters, like has a PDF available. So there would be a PDF attached to this file for fields of study, which are determined by AI review as well. So I wanted to show you also one of the things that Semantic Scholar does for some articles, and I think it's expanding. They have what's called a TLDR, too long didn't read. So this second article in the search results is an example of this. This is a 1-sentence summary of the article. It's not for every article yet. As you can see, our top result does not have it up here. But for a lot of them, it does have that. So that kind of helps you figure out, what do you want to read? What do you not want to read? So I want to go back and show you what it looks like to look at a particular article. So I'm going to click on this top result here, the clear path, the framework for enhancing information literacy through prompt engineering. So this is called a paper page. It's going to give you information to help you understand the paper, situate it in the scholarly conversation, and read it as well. You can click the view via publisher link, and that will open up the PDF or take you to the publisher page. So what we have on this page, we can see that this article has had 133 citations. We can see in the upper right-hand corner, this is a AI categorization of the types of classifications, or sorry, the classification of the type of citations. So Semantic Scholar is suggesting that there are 4 highly influential citations, which means that these 4 papers have cited this, and it has been a highly influential paper in that subsequent paper. There's been some background citations, which I can imagine would be coming in a literature review. Some have cited it for methods, some have cited it for results. So this page does not have it, but many other pages do also have a list of the references that the article in question cites. You can also see related papers. So let me click on that. And then down at the bottom, this is papers that, based on semantic search, Semantic Scholar has identified as related. One thing you can do is you can create an alert for when this article gets a new citation. You can also create a citation, a works cited entry. Here it gives you the options of MLA, APA, or Chicago style at this point. And there is also an author page. So let's go look at this author. There should be a page for him that contains all of the resources that he has that are in Semantic Scholar. So we can also follow this author if we wanted to. We can click on this to follow the author and then get alerts when he has new papers or new citations. There's other information as well, such as his co-authors, authors he's referenced, and so forth. So quite a lot of information. Now, if you have an author page, it will be because one or more of your publications is available in the Semantic Scholar database. You can claim your own author page to be able to add material, edit information, and so forth. So that button would be right underneath there. So let me go back and we can actually take a look at the paper. So on this page, I'm going to click on View by Publisher. And in this case, it opens up a PDF we can access. On occasion, it will give you some results that you do not have the full PDF of. And if you encounter that situation, you can try searching for it in library databases as well, on Google Scholar or some of the other places where we can find literature. Or you can just ask us, or we can place an interlibrary loan request. Another feature of Semantic Scholar is that you can organize materials that you find into a library. So the way I get to that is by clicking on my account in the upper right-hand corner of the page. And I will click on Library. So what I have here is a set of articles that I have saved to a library so I can consult them later, keeping all of my things in one place. And what these do also is you can use them to inform research feeds, which are another aspect of Semantic Scholar that I think is really interesting. So that is an option that is right above library in the account drop-down menu. So these are recommendations based on the papers that you have in your library. I do not have any recommendations yet. It updates them once a day, and I added these this morning. Tomorrow I should have some recommended research in here, articles for me to take a look at. And the more you add to your library, the more accurate these will be. You can also identify papers that are not related so that the algorithm learns to exclude some things like that as well. You will also have the research dashboard, which is the top link on the account drop-down menu. And this is where you will get your alerts, both your article alerts, your author alerts, as well as the recommendations. Those will be all in one place. So you can set up the recommendations here to get that started or rely on what you've got in your library already. I did want to show one last thing about this, and I'm going to pull up a particular paper that I know has this feature just so I can show it. So one feature for some papers, and it's expanding, it's relatively new, is ask this paper. And this particular paper does have it. And what this is set up to do is basically ask questions of a particular paper. So for example, what methods are used? We can click on that. And it will give us an AI-powered summary. Eventually, it might take a while. I know Semantic Scholar has been giving me a little bit of trouble today. But here we go. So we have two actual models, and it's actually doing an A/B test here to see if we can help, if it helps to have one or the other. So that's pretty cool. So this is in development, but it has it for an increasing number of resources. So I'm going to stop there with Semantic Scholar. There's plenty more things that we can do with it, but these are just a couple just to get you started, to give you a sense of what this tool can do. The second tool I want to talk about is ResearchRabbit. So you can get to this from researchrabbit.ai. This too is a free resource, and its main goal is to help you find and research and understand connections, get recommendations, and it presents this in a visual way. So I already have a ResearchRabbit account, so let me take you to my main page here. Underlying ResearchRabbit are two collections of research literature. One is the Semantic Scholar corpus, the one that we were just looking at through the Semantic Scholar tool, as well as PubMed for biomedical literature. I have a completely empty screen here because I want to show you what it looks like to build something from scratch in ResearchRabbit. So the first thing we need to do is add a collection. So we can click New Collection in the upper left-hand corner, and we'll give it a name, maybe just Trying Out ResearchRabbit. And so I now have a collection, but I don't have any papers in it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add some papers. I am going to add one of the papers we are looking at in Semantic Scholar. Bear with me one second. And I see here the top result is the article that I was looking for. And now I can add it to my collection. Okay. And once I close out of that window, even with this one paper, I can start exploring connections and recommendations among literature. I can click on, for example, similar work. And this will give me papers that Research Rabbit has identified as similar based on semantic searching. And you can see one of the things that I think is cool is you can see a graph, right? You can see the visual relationships among literature with our articles that we have included in our collection in green, everything else in blue. So you can look at these either as a network or as a timeline, which I think is pretty interesting as well. So this will show you all of the similar works organized by date. You can add more papers to your collection. So for example, if I were to add this paper, I'm just going to select a few just to show you. As I have over here, I have 2 selected papers and I can add them to my collection. And now what that's done is that's added some information to my collection. So I'm getting additional similar suggested works. I'm also seeing earlier work and later work. So work that has come prior to the pieces that are in my collection and later work that has drawn upon that literature. You can also explore authors. So here are all of the authors that were included in these recommended resources, as well as suggested authors. So based on these articles, here are some suggested authors that exist in the same discipline that you may want to check out. So it's worth noting here is this is sort of designed to mimic the rabbit hole of research. So you can scroll back in time using the scroll bar on the left, on the bottom of the screen to scroll from right to left back to your origin. So you can kind of retrace your steps back to the beginning. If you want to undo any of the steps that you've taken, there is an option to close them out. If I hover over this column, for example, I can close it. I can close this one, and so on and so forth. So you can also share collections with collaborators. So that is another cool feature of Research Rabbit. And you can get personalized digests with email alerts and email updates. So I will just click on the name of my collection here. And then under public collection, I have public collection here. I do not have this set to public, but you can make it public and share that link. You can share the shareable link. You can add collaborators. And then you can also get email updates. So this would send you, I believe, a weekly email with updates. So there's pretty robust help and support resources available for Research Rabbit. I think it has a bit of a more steep learning curve than Semantic Scholar, but the help features I've actually found very helpful. And you can find them over on the right side of the screen with the question mark. So there's FAQs, videos, and then a feature tour. Okay, so that is Research Rabbit. We'll pause there and move on to our third tool, which is Elicit. So you can find this at elicit.com. As with Research Rabbit and several other similar tools, this is based on the Semantic Scholar database, the collection that Semantic Scholar uses. Elicit does a lot of things. It can find and synthesize literature and among other things. So I'm just going to jump into this. There's a lot that I have not even tried out with Elicit a whole lot yet. One reason I haven't is because it is a freemium tool, right? There you can get a free account and use some features, but if you upgrade, you get access to many, many more features. So still exploring this one, but I wanted to show it today because I think it is pretty interesting. And exorbitantly expensive if you want to upgrade it. So options when you log in, you have several. We have get a research report. We do not have start a systematic review right now because I'm using a free version of the account, but you can start systematic reviews with a pro account. Find papers, extract data from PDFs, and list of concepts. So let me show you what these look like. These research reports, let's start on that. And if you're just trying out this tool, you can use some of the free examples so that you're not using, you have a limited number of research reports you can get over a particular time period when you're using the free account. So let's just use one of these samples, which does not count against our total. So I will click magnesium effects on sleep, which is one of these options. One very interesting thing that Elicit does is it provides feedback for your question. So in this case, it told me it's a great question. In other cases, it might say, oh, you should consider adding this to your research question or clarify this. But I will just leave it there and click the arrow button. This will take a little bit of time, but what Elicit is doing is pulling together quite a bit of information for me. So it has a large summary of all of the literature it found. It has a table of included studies, which include the study name, the population it studied, intervention, outcome measures, study design, and so forth. It just goes on, summarizing all of the literature that it found. Now, one thing that's also interesting, you'll see these kind of stars listed periodically throughout the report. If you click on those, that will highlight supporting quotes from the literature that support that analysis that Elicit has provided you. So quite a bit that you can do here, quite in depth. I think these are probably most powerful when used as a complete launching off point for research when you're trying to understand an issue, perhaps one that's new to you or adjacent to what you've done and not necessarily something that you've spent a whole lot of time with prior to that. So that is the research reports feature. Let me go back to the Elicit main page and we'll talk about a couple of other features. One is find papers, and this is an unlimited feature for the free account. What it's going to do is it's going to provide us with some literature as well as a summary of what it believes are the top papers. And for free, it's the top 4 papers, and you can get up to 8, a summary for up to 8 with a paid account. So let's just type in a research question. Let's try one that is of interest to a lot of people. What is the impact of social media on the mental health of teenagers? I mentioned earlier that it's going to give me feedback on research questions sometimes. So in this case, it thought about it a little bit and it said, this is a good research question. You may want to add these elements for better results. So maybe I want to look at a particular population. So if I hover over population, it will give me a suggestion about how I might strengthen that. So let me just go with that one for now, and I'll show you what the Find Papers tool looks like. Again, this takes a little bit of time because it's doing quite a lot of work in the background here. Give it one more minute to have our summary of papers. All right, and so we have a summary of the top 4 papers found here, as well as a list of relevant papers underneath it with the paper name over on the left, information about the publication, a link to the article so that you can go read it, as well as a summary of the abstract. You can also filter these results. You can sort them. So for example, filters, we can adjust the publication year, the journal quality based on the SJR, the SciMago journal rating, study type. So this is very interesting as well if you're looking for a particular kind of literature, such as a systematic review or a longitudinal study. And then you can narrow it down with abstract keyword searching or not containing. So one thing you can also do here is you can add new steps at the bottom. So this would basically refine what you've got so far or add things to this collection that you're working with right here. So that's something that's pretty interesting. You can kind of make it an iterative process like research is. All right, going back to the main page, talk briefly about two other features. One is extract data from PDFs, and this is one of the tools that's limited with the free account. What this does is systematically pull out information from a set of articles that you've uploaded. So I have one article that I've uploaded here. If I had more articles that I uploaded to elicit, they would appear here. But for the sake of demonstration, I'll just stick with this one article. If I click on whichever paper I would like, and I hit the arrow button, this is pulling out data in a systematic way from this paper. This may take a little bit of time. Oh gosh, of course, this is when it may not work. Let me try that one more time. Oh goodness. All right. Sometimes this happens, right? With AI tools, these are all new. What it should be doing is something similar to what we saw in the research report, which is information on the paper, as well as other bits of information. Here we go. I needed to add columns. I'm still learning. So we can add information. We can add columns such as summary of the paper, main findings. There we go. Now I'm back. And it will do this for any of the articles that you have selected. Now there are some limitations on the number of articles that it will extract data from over a particular time period. I believe it's 20 a month. So keep that in mind if you were using the free version. If you want to upgrade, you can have many more. I should note that anything you upload to Elicit is kept private in your own private library. It is not shared with Elicit. It's supposed to be private to your own account. All right. And lastly, a list of concepts. This is interesting just to see some ideas that are across different papers, how they're discussed. So it's a little, there's some overlap here certainly with some of the other tools, but let's say we wanted to look for the concept, the effects of social media. And it's searching for papers that discuss the concept of the effects of social media, and it's going to share a variety of concepts that it finds in the literature. So for example, we see increased connectivity, information overload, a variety of other things that we know to be effects of social media. Okay. The last thing I'll mention about Elicit is that you can see your recent activity. So if you wanted to go back to a previous thing that you have been working with, that goes into what they call a notebook. You can call back to that earlier. And so in this case, we can go back and get all of our information again. For example, this is the review for the teen mental health and social media question. All right. So those are three tools that I think are interesting. They have different learning curves. They do different things. I think Elicit probably is the biggest learning curve. So it's sort of going in reverse order here with the biggest learning curve third. And I think Semantic Scholar is probably the easiest in terms of, in the grand scheme of things. There's still plenty to learn there, but I think it's the most straightforward of all of the three that we're talking about today. So I want to move on now to some best practices for using research in using generative AI tools in research. Excuse me. So the first thing is to pick and use your tool wisely, right? There are so many out there. Each tool has its strengths and weaknesses, a different focus or mission. As I mentioned, a different learning curve. Try a few, see what you like. It depends on what you need. That will be the one that you use. As you pick, also consider the policies of the tool. There are many, many ethical considerations with artificial intelligence tools such as privacy, copyright, data ownership, and so forth. So consider that as you're evaluating which tools you want to use and how you use them. Make sure you're comfortable with what the policies are. And that requires knowing what the policies are in the first place. And of course, you have to ethically and use these tools ethically and appropriately. So following the same general ethical principles that we know generative AI brings with it, labor issues, environmental issues, privacy, right, intellectual property. So that might mean that you limit your use or use it in specific circumstances, or you can advocate for changes. I would say also careful about uploading your stuff or your data. Know the policies. This is another instance in which you need to know the policies. Do the tools add things that are uploaded to their corpus? Would uploading your data or your piece of writing violate any privacy or ethical issues related to personal data, privacy, confidentiality, or just best practices in data stewardship and storage? And of course, use it appropriately and disclose your use. If you're working on something for publication, make sure that your use of the tool follows the rules for the publication. Your work is still your own work, right? AI tools are tools to support your thinking, not to create the work that you put your name on. You still need to do the work of reading things, analyzing things. This is to facilitate that process. And then lastly, fact check your results. We know AI tools aren't perfect, right? They're getting better, but they are not perfect. So we need to be careful about hallucinations, misinterpretation, incorrect information, and things like that. So always requires a reality check and some extra digging around. One last item, how to get to materials if the AI tool does not have a full text copy. So this is when, again, you'd go to library resources first, or ask your librarian for support with finding this article. I would say another consideration is understanding the source material for the tool that you're using. In the case of the tools we looked at today, many of them use Semantic Scholar. A couple others use a couple of other tools. But keep in mind what the corpus is that it's drawing from. It might not be super diverse. A lot of these are only English language or US heavy. Where did the corpus come from? Is there copyright issues? Are library resources better or more comprehensive for you? Something to consider as well. And then lastly, I wanted to share a few resources for further investigation because these tools are evolving constantly. So I really like this first link, the Ithaca SNR product tracker. This is a live updated list of tools that are targeted for use in higher education, among students and researchers and faculty and so forth. So it's updated pretty regularly. It's very helpful. It's a very long list, as you'll see. It includes both paid and free tools. The second tool I have here is a blog post from a librarian in Singapore who does quite a lot of work on AI and research. And it's a list of academic search engines that use large language models for generative answers. The University of Illinois has best practices in using generative AI for research. So some good guidelines. Some are similar to the best practices I just shared. And then lastly, YouTube tutorials. I found these immensely helpful when I was looking at some of these tools and figuring out which ones I wanted to talk about during this presentation, and how to get the most out of some of these things. So I have here a list of 3 YouTube channels that I found the most helpful. Some of them also do other resources, other information such as, how to publish and how to survive grad school and things like that. But they do also have quite a number of pretty substantive AI tool reviews. So those are some resources for further investigation. Thank you to Jacob for putting those in the chat. And we will have the recording up later today. We can also send the slides out if that would be helpful as well. So that is all I had for a formal presentation. I wanted to see if there are any questions now.
Thank you, Kathy. That was absolutely wonderful and chock full of stuff even new to me, because like she said, things of this nature are changing all the time. It feels like every time I go to use one of these tools, they have a new feature or they've tweaked something. I want to thank you for attending today. If you have any questions, please feel free to go ahead and drop those in the chat, and we'll have time for questions both recorded and unrecorded. I also want to say there are a few more sessions in our AI series. I've just dropped the link to our events calendar if you want to sign up, including in April. We're going to have some time for hands-on demo at the library. So if you want to work with a group of people on testing out some of these tools, please swing on by for that event. So does anyone have any questions today?
I'm still processing all the information, so I want to thank you all for providing this. I've been a little reluctant to come to AI, and so I'm starting to see how it'll be useful. So I do really appreciate the information provided today.
Thank you. And that reluctance is
Thank you.
probably a good thing. We at the library, we're not anti-AI. We are, pro AI, but with guardrails and training. And so that's a good thing. That's a good attitude to have.
Thanks, I appreciate it.
Just want to give it one more minute. I will ask Kathy if from demoing those tools, is there one thing you found you might do in your own research with these tools?
Yeah, I think one thing that I've been thinking about recently, I'm working with, a number of grad students who are working on creating literature reviews. And one of the tools that we often discuss when doing literature reviews is the concept of citation chaining, like finding resources that an article that you're looking at has cited or that have subsequently cited that article going forwards and backwards. And I think Research Rabbit is a really interesting tool to help facilitate that. And it's actually one that I'm going to be sharing with some students that I think will find it helpful.
Not seeing any other questions come into the chat. I do want to go ahead and say thank you for attending today. We are going to have some time for unrecorded questions, but I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording so we can get to those.